Live. Hello, hello. Hello, is this working? Testing, testing. I don't think there's any sound. Hello, hello. Don't look like there's any sound on this thing.
Go round up the troops.
Hello, hello. Watch out for the wire.
Oh, you're upgrading to video podcast. Nice.
Yeah, but it looks like the sound's working. What do I do?
Do the sound sync, use your old thing for the sound, and then
But it's a live
send it to
thing.
me, and it'll do both. I'll be able to put the video to go with your mouth.
It's a live thing.
I don't know how to do it. Unmute the microphone. There's a playback and a recording.
All right. So here's my sound, but there's nothing with.
Right click it.
Right click it. Open volume on settings. Microphone. Test microphone. Testing, testing. It looks like it's working. Where's my phone? I took it. You have a phone? How'd you get to this video?
You
You have YouTube on here?
Internet, yeah.
Internet. So you do it? How do I find the video?
There might have been a day when I had to worry about you touching my phone. That one's pretty clear.
How do you internet?
It's still early in the day, though.
How do I?
Yeah, man.
I don't know how to work this.
Perfect, but I don't gloat because it's the better tomorrow.
YouTube. Okay, now I don't know how you'd find it. Basi Friedman. Here we go. Live now. All right, let's see if it works. Hello, hello. All right. Looks like it's working. Let's see if it works. All right. Hello, hello. All right. All right, let's start. Okay. Let's turn off. So hopefully this will work. Okay, let's credit this as well. Okay, we're holding the Basi Legani 5720, 1960. Is that correct? No. Yeah, 5720, 1960. We're holding chapter 4 in the middle, so we'll be on page Chaf, which is where the Alta begins. A quick overview of what we've done till now, and then we'll give an introduction to what this next part of the Maimer is. Are you ready? Here we go. Basi Legani. The main idea of Basi Legani is that in order to bring Hashem's presence back down into the world, it's through Iskafia and Ishapcha. We have a Yetzer Hara, we have an evil inclination, and in order to bring the Shekhinah back down here, we have to curb our desires or transform them into positive things. Like he said, transforming our foolishness in no good into unholy foolishness which is doing sinful things, and change that around to do good things foolishly. Where there you change around the foolishness of the world and you make this world into a home for Hashem again. And how do you do it? By curbing your desires, by curbing your Yetzer Hara, by Iskafia and Asapah. Iskafia means by breaking your animal self, by breaking your Yetzer Hara. That's the way you make this world a home for Hashem. That is the main idea up until this point. And in this part of the Maimer, he's explaining a couple of things. He adds in chapter 10, which is what we're doing this year, he's adding a couple of things. Number one, that what he's adding is, he explains first of all what this home is for Hashem, which is a home for Hashem's essence. And in order to explain this, he brought the Baal Shem Tov, where the Baal Shem Tov says how important it is, our service of Hashem. And he basically says that if we have humility if we have humility when it's not called for, so then it distances us from Hashem. Why? Because when somebody tells himself, "What's my Torah learning? What's my mitzvahs? What is it all worth?" That distances one from Hashem, because he doesn't know what he's supposed to do, not realizing that your mitzvahs, your Torah, actually draws down to all the worlds. And he even says that the great king, which he says a reference to the way Hashem is in his essence, is waiting by your lips to hear you say the words of Torah. And so in other words, that what we do brings Hashem back down into the world. But what he ends off with, what the Baal Shem Tov ends off over there, is that this humility is like, it says in the Gemara, that the humility of Zechariah caused the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. Which means is that improper humility, brings the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. So doing what we're supposed to, taking responsibility for our actions, and in other words, as the Maimer says, Skafi and Asapcha, curbing our desires and doing what Hashem wants, that brings Hashem back to his garden. That brings a home, not just for Hashem, but for his very essence. That was the first point. Another point that he explained was based on the Magid, is that not only do we draw down Hashem's essence, but we also draw down the light that fills the world. The personal light, the light that comes into the world, different according to everything and every world. And that's the second point that he brings in this discourse, is that doing Iskav and Ishapcha isn't just some transcendent experience that we're going to have, that we're going to be blinded by Hashem's presence, His essence coming to the world, but it's actually, we're going to be able to experience it in ourselves. Why? Because it will be in a way that we can relate to it, we can experience it. And the way he explains it is based on what the Maggid Mezritch says, that how come Hashem appeared to the Jews by the sea as a young boy, and he appeared to the Jews by Mount Sinai as an old man. And he said what appeared to the Jew was not Hashem, but the way in Hashem is engraved our image. He said, like a father loves his child, that the image of the child is engraved in the father's brain, and based on where the child is at, that's the way that the child looks. That's where the image is engraved in his father's brain. So when the child is not doing what he's supposed to, that image is now engraved in the father's brain like that. And the same thing is with Hashem, so to speak. that when we are not doing what we're supposed to, so it says, Imrachatz Hashem Tzayas, but they see that Hashem washes out the dirt, the filth of the daughters of Tzion, and the Magdav says, what does he wash? He cleans himself out because our filth is in him, because we are reflected in Hashem, we are engraved in Hashem. And what the Rebbe adds to that, is that where is engraved? Engraved is in the essence of the thing. When you engrave words in a stone, so that the words are engraved in the. So there's not two things here. There's not a stone and the letters. It's all one thing, because engraved means it's engraved in the thing itself. And the same thing is, he explains that when we're engraved in Hashem, what does that mean? On the one hand, we're engraved in Hashem's essence. Essence is like we said before, that we're making a home for Hashem's very essence. But at the same time, what's engraved there, as the Maggid says, when we're old, when we're venerable, when we're like a sage, we're engraved like a sage. When we're young, like we're by the splitting of the Red Sea, we're like a young boy. And when we're filthy, that's where we're engraved. Meaning not just that the transcendent light, but also the differences. When I'm better, when I'm worse, is also engraved there. So what that shows is that what is engraved in Hashem's essence, not just the essence, but also my differences. And so therefore, when we draw down Hashem's essence, we're not just drawing it down in a transcendent way, we're also drawing it down into my differences. As the way that I said that even in Galos, I should be able to feel that. Even in the where the filth is, even there, we should be able to feel our connection with Hashem's essence. That was up until now, again, up until this point in the Maimer, the first 2 points of that we draw down Hashem's essence, and that it not just Hashem's essence, we also draw it down into Mimali Kolalman, into light that fills the world. Now we're going to now the Fidik Rebbe goes into another point, and again, chapter 10 of Basi Legani. We started this last week, so we'll go the first part. Again, we'll do we'll just review what we did last week, and then we'll go into the Alter Rebbe. Here's the thing: the Jews are called Tzivos Hashem. When they leave Egypt, the Jews are called Tzivos Hashem. And the next part of the Maimer, the Fidik Rebbe is going to explain why are we called Tzivos Hashem, the legions, the army of Hashem. But he begins with a question, and this question becomes the whole discussion of the next part of the Rebbe's Maimer. So the Rebbe is now going to explain the previous Rebbe's question, just a line in his Maimer. He's going to explain that question. What was the question? What's the question that the Fidik Rebbe asks? Do you want to go? Go ask Davi for my phone. She will play my phone. Unless you want to go with Davi. So what's the question? The question goes like this: how come the Jews are called Tzivos Hashem when we find that Hashem was not yet called Tzvos? There's 7 names of Hashem that you're not allowed to erase. There's 7 names of Hashem. First one, of course, Yud Kei Vav Kei. There's Kel. There's Aleph Dal Nun Yud. There's Elikim. There's 7 names. The 7th one is Tzvos. There's actually an argument in Gemara if it's actually considered one of the holy names that are not allowed to be erased. And the conclusion is, the halach is that it's one of the 7 holy names that are not allowed to erase, right? But the name Tzvos is not mentioned in the Chumash. It's not mentioned until Chana. What does Chana mean? So you have Moshe's generation, you have Yeshua's generation, you have Zakanim, the elders, as the Pirkei Avos says, and only afterwards the Nevi'im begin. Shmuel was the beginning of the Nevi'im. So it's until the times of the prophets, this name Tzvos was not used. And yet, what happens? The Jewish people are called Tzivos Hashem, even though Hashem himself is not called Tzvos. Yeah. Okay, tell me he has to share with you. One problem with doing it on live. Doesn't work. When you have little kids running around, it's okay. Okay. It's endearing. So what's the again? So what's the problem? If Hashem is not called Tzvos, then how are Jews called Tzivos Hashem? If Jews are supposed to reflect that which Hashem is. We even said it, by the way, by the Maggid Mizrich. He said our image is engraved in Him, and He reflects that back to us. If our name describes us the way we are, right? How come we're used with a name that wasn't applicable in that day, in that time? And as Rebbe explains this question, because basically the name for redemption is Yud Kei Vav Kei. We find it in this week's parsha. Ve'era Hashem el Avram Yitzchak v'Yaakov v'shmi Hashem le'yadayti lem. Hashem says, I appeared to Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and the name Yud Kei Vav Kei I did not show them, but I did appear to them in the names of Kel Shakai. In other words, the names of Kel Shakai was also in the times of the forefathers, but the name Havai you didn't show them. Why? Because the name Havai was only going to come by Moshe Rabbeinu, because it's the name of Geula, of the redemption, right? So what do you have here? You have that there's a name Yud Kei Vav Kei, which is the name of redemption. There's the name Kel Shakai, which was the names that were used in the times of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and the times of Egypt. Then you had the exile of Egypt, where that name of Kel Shakai was hidden. That's what Golus means. The name of Hashem is hidden. But only much later was the name Tzvais used. So the Jews are called with the name Tzvais, which represents the name of Hashem, of Tzvais, when that name wasn't even used then. It's not the name Yud Kei Vav Kei. It's not even the name of Kel Shakai. So how come the Jews are called Tzivas Hashem, the legions of Hashem, when that name was not used for Hashem? Right? That's basically the question. Now the Rebbe goes and brings that from the Alter Rebbe and the Mittler Rebbe to explain this question a little deeper. Why are the Jews called Tzivas Hashem if Hashem wasn't even called Tzvais then? So to do this, let's give a couple of introductions. Okay. First of all, let's explain for a moment the difference between the world called Atzilus and the worlds called Bia, Bri Yitzir Asiya. In Kabbalah, you have four worlds. Four worlds. You have Atzilus, which is the first world, and then you have Bria Yitzir Asiya, Bia is abbreviated, which would be the lower three worlds. Okay? What are these worlds? So Atzilus is before creation. Bria means creation. Yitzir is forming, and Asiya is the finishing of the job, right? So in creation, you have three levels. You have Bria, Yitzir, Asiya. A lot of times it's related to thought, speech, and action. It's almost like Hashem's thought, speech, and action. So in order to create, you have three steps: thought, speech, then action. And our world would be the action world, the world of Asiya. What is this Atzilus? So Atzilus would be the world that's just before creation, which basically means it's not something else. It's not something other than Hashem. Atzilus is a world which is one with Hashem. So if you'll say that Mashava Dibra Maisa, thought, speech, and actions like Bria Tzir Asiya, so Atzilus would be like the body or your emotions, right? Your heart, your brain. These are things that are connected to you. It's even though you have a soul and a body, but they become so connected with each other, it's very difficult to separate the two. Right? To change your thoughts is quite easy. To change a limb is quite difficult. So in a sense, Atzilus is Hashem's body. What would that mean? That this, when you say, Atzilus has 10 spheres. Every world has spheres, has 10 attributes, right? So in Atzilus, when you say that it's Chachma of Atzilus, the wisdom of Atzilus, what are you basically saying? You're basically saying this is the wisdom of Hashem. Because that world is one with Hashem. This is Hashem's wisdom. Now, before the world of Atzilus, Hashem doesn't have any definition. There's no wisdom. There's nothing. It's just simplicity. So it's infinite light. You don't have any definition at all. So Atzilus again would be the wisdom of Hashem, the chesed, the kindness of Hashem, the judgment of Hashem, and so on and so forth. It's the world of Atzilus becomes one with Hashem. Put even more than that. Okay, what is the famous Rambam? Maimonides says that Hashem is Hu HaYodea, Hu HaYadua, Hu HaMado. He is the knower, He is the knowledge, and He is the known. By us, you have three things. There's me, there's what I know, and there's my knowledge. And you can have one without the other. There can be me and my knowledge, but I don't know something. There could also be, unfortunately, somebody who's a vegetable, right? So there's him. There's things to be known, but he doesn't know anything because his that part of his brain is not really working. By us, there's three different things. The Rambam says Hashem is one. Hashem echad. Hashem is one. Hashem is one in every way. How does he say that? Meaning that Hashem is the knower. He's the knowledge, and he's what's known all as one. There's no three things. There's all just one. And the way the Alter Rebbe explains, it's not just talking about Hashem's knowledge, but it's talking about all the middays of Hashem, all the attributes of Hashem in Atzilos. It's just one. They all come together as one. Which basically means that the world of Atzilos, what's in Atzilos, in that world, everything there is one with Hashem. And you can't separate those things from him. So it's even more than a body and a soul. A body and a soul are those two separate things that are coming together. But in Atzilus, it's all just one. There's just one. There's Hashem, and in Hashem he has the spheres, but they're all one with him. In Bria, in creation, that's where you start having other things. That's where you start having something else. That you have a creation. The way that Kabbalah puts this is, the wording that they use is Iyu v'chayu ichad, Iyu v'gamu ichad. Him and his light is one. Him and his life is one, and him and his vessels. Garmoy, I think, means bones, but it means the vessel, right? So in Atzilus you have a light and you have a vessel. In Atzilus, the light and the vessel are all one. Him, his light, and his vessel, they all come together, all as one. You cannot say that in creation. You cannot say that this table, him and his light, are all one. Why? Because that's almost idol worship. You can say that it's completely nullified, that all there is Hashem. So there's nothing else other than him because everything is nullified to him. But you can't say that everything is one with him. You can't say that this and him are one thing. That's borderline idol worship, right? So, but in Atzilus, you do say that. Because in Atzilus, it's not something else. It is him. It's his love. It's his fear. It's his wisdom. It's his bina. It's him. So the first thing we have is Atzilus is one with Hashem. In creation, you have others. You have other things. That's number one. Number two is, what is a name? What is the definition of a name? Why is something a name? We talked about this last week as well. What is the definition of a name? What is the purpose of a name? The purpose of a name is for somebody else. The essence does not need a name. If I'm all alone, I have no need for a name. I need a name so somebody else can call me. But at the same time, a name, especially in Lashon Kodesh, as the Alter says in Tanya, a name describes the thing itself. It's the vessel for the energy itself. That's why other mission, for instance, was able to name the animals, right? Because he saw the godly energy in the animals, right? And there's this is a shar, this is a sus, he was able to do that, right? Because he saw the God light in the animal, so he was able to give it a name because he saw the energy, and the energy comes down in a name. Okay. Okay. So the energy again is in a name. I have to rethink this YouTube thing. That's to get used to.
Well, it's live right now?
Yeah. Where is it?
How can somebody watch it after the fact?
Like when I post it live, you can watch it.
Watch Ishi Kadoozy? Yeah.
If I find it. Yeah. Okay. Just getting used to. What? And also it's too much going on. See what I mean? It's like, all right, here we go. What? It's not yeshiva anymore? We got family with 4 kids. Okay, let's go back. So what is a name? So a name draws down the energy itself as well. That's why it says when a father calls a child their name, it's with Ruach HaKodesh, because a name is connected to the energy of the soul. So what do you have like this? This works with us, and especially this works with the Eibishter, with Hashem. Why? Because Hashem is completely beyond the world. Hashem is completely beyond any of these attributes. So in order to draw Hashem down into these attributes, we call him by names. These names are the way Hashem comes down into these attributes. And that's the definition of a name of Hashem. When you call Hashem a name, he's Chachma, Bino, all these names, it refers to Hashem's light in these spheres. So, what is that practically? Practically means like this: when you're davening, right, and you learn a little bit of Kabbalah, every name has a certain level, a certain idea behind it. You even look at some of the Kabbalistic Siddurim; they'll have different vowels for the different names, represents different levels, and so on and so forth, right? What is the idea? What does that mean? It went away.
No, funny video.
But you ask David to help you also, okay?
If you ask the audience what the issue was,
We'll say that.
maybe someone is working.
Okay. We're holding the middle of Dalit, but we didn't start inside yet. All right. So let's go back. So when it comes to the name of Hashem, when you call Hashem a name, so you're middle of davening, and you're davening and you say Baruch Ata Havaya. What are you saying? You're saying the way that Hashem comes down into a certain sphera, into a certain thing. And that's why the spheres are important, because you want to make sure that the light comes to the correct channel. You want to make sure that if you're asking for Hashem to give you, then you want to make sure that's going through a channel as opposed to a restrictive channel, because otherwise, God forbid, it might not come down, right? So you need to use the correct name, the correct address. It's almost like, as an example, where you have a king running a country, where you want to get more money for whatever it is. You got to go to the department, to the minister that gives out money, as opposed to if you want to go for other things, you go to different departments, right? You go to different ministers. You have to go to the right place to get the right thing, because if you're going to go to the budgeting department to get yourself some more money, most likely you're going to get turned down. And with Hashem, in a sense, it's almost the same way. Even though by Hashem it's all one. It's all one. There's no ministers. But with Hashem, it's the same thing. Is in order to get something, you want to make sure to go through the right channel, because Hashem wants everything to go in a natural way, right? Just like in order to make money, Hashem wants you to work, and if you're not going to work, you're not going to make money. That's the channel. The same. There's also spiritual channels, and in order to get from those channels, you want to go through the right. You have to go through the right channel. That's the names of Hashem. A name represents the way that Hashem comes down into a certain channel. And so when you say Baruch Ata Hashem, you're talking to Hashem. You're not, God forbid, talking to the attribute. Again, that's borderline idol worship, right? You can't talk to the sphera. You're talking to Hashem, but you're talking to Hashem the way He comes down, so to speak, into a certain thing. That's the significance of a name. So, what do we have with all of this? So the Alter Rebbe says this is the difference between the names, the 6 names, and the 7 name, which is twice. The difference is, which world are you talking about? Are you talking about the world of Atzilus, or are you talking about the world of Bria, of Bia? All the names of Hashem are in Atzilus. It's Hashem's kindness of Atzilus, Hashem's severity in Atzilus. But the name Tzvais is not in Atzilus. That's the way Hashem comes down into creation. And that's the meaning of the word Tzvais. The Alter Rebbe says is Ois hu b'tzav shloi from the Gemara. Ois hu b'tzav shloi. Ois means he is exceptional. He stands out. He's unique, right? In his legions. Tzav shloi. In his legions, he's unique. He stands out. What is the meaning of that name? What is the meaning of Ois hu b'tzav shloi? He stands out. He's unique. He's exceptional in his legions. What you're basically saying is, number one, is that there are legions. In Atzilus, there are no legions. You can't say there's anything else in Atzilus. We said before, Atzilus is oneness. There's just one. There's just Hashem there. So when you're talking legions, you're no longer talking Atzilus. Now you're talking Biyah. But in Biyah, you say Ois hu b'tzava shaloi. He is outstanding amongst his legions, meaning that even the legions recognize that Hashem is unique, that Hashem is in command, that Hashem is Hashem. So what does that mean? The names of Hashem are all how Hashem becomes one with those spheres, and they're all in Atzilus. But the name Tzavos is the way Hashem comes down into creation, and over there, what happens? It's the way Hashem causes a bittul, a nullification in creation, that the creation becomes nullified to Hashem. But it's not Atzilus anymore. In Atzilus, you don't need nullification. Over there, everything is Achdus, everything is one. He is outstanding in his legions, meaning that in creation we recognize that there's one Hashem. And here's the thing: in the times of Moshe Rabbeinu, he was on the level of Atzilus. He was on this level of Atzilus, meaning when he was walking on earth, right? He was a piece of Atzilus walking on this earth, which actually shows that the worlds aren't somewhere else. They're all right here. It's just layers of reality. So we live. Asiya means we're in the physical reality, meaning that your eyes, your senses, only pick up physical stimuli. Is that what it's called? It only picks up physical, right? When the soul, after 120 years, goes up to heaven, what does it pick up? All of a sudden, it sees the same world, but it's not picking up physical, the physical of it, the physicality of it. Now it's picking up the world of Yetzirah, or whatever world it is. Moshe Rabbeinu, in this world, was on the world. It was in the level of Atzilus. He was roaming the world of Atzilus while he was walking around in this world. The Rebbe too. There's an neshama. That's what Rebbe means. An neshama of Atzilus, right? That's why the Chassidus says that he's talking to Paro. He's very fascinating. You have Atzilus talking to Klippus. It's complete. You're talking about two complete opposites. There's Atzilus talking to, but it goes to show again is that it's all right here. It's all right here. But what does it mean? By Moshe Rabbeinu, he lived Atzilus. That's what he saw. That's the reality that he saw. The people of his generation were also on that level. They were the generation of Moshe, meaning they were on his level. The Rebbe actually translates Doir, generation, also means Shura, means line, row. Dara de'una, lungs and lungs and traphus, and traphus. So there's lobes on the lung. So there's a row of lobes, right? Dara, it's called Dara de'una, a row. So when you say Doir of Moshe, the generation of Moshe, you're also saying the row of Moshe. That means that they're on the same row. They're on the same wavelength. Everybody in his generation was on the level of Atzilus. Now you understand why they didn't need the name of Tzvos. Tzvos was there. It existed. It's the name of Hashem. But it was so outshined by the level of Atzilus. Because Atzilus was what was shining there. You didn't need the level of Tzvos. Because again, Atzilus means Achdus, oneness. Moshe was on that level. Everything was on that level then. And the name of Tzvos shows on creation. But in time of Atzilus, at time of Moshe, they didn't reach that level. They didn't need that level. Because Atzilus was shining. Atzilus was shining. Bria doesn't, it's like a candle in sunlight. What's a candle in sunlight do for you? Nothing. The name of Tzvos at that time was like a candle in sunlight. It was, and now we understand the question. Let's go back now to this. Back to the question that the Frierdiker Rebbe asks: why are the Jews called Tzivos Hashem? Now you can understand even deeper. You're not just talking about that it was a name that wasn't used then. You're talking about it's a whole different category of a name. Before that, they were on a level of Atzilus, and it's using a name which is a reference to creation, when they didn't even need such a name then. So it makes the question, the Frierdiker Rebbe larger, right? Why is the Jewish people called Tzivos Hashem when essentially that name wasn't even used then? Yeah? Let's do this inside now. Hopefully you got that. Okay, we're holding the second paragraph in Dalit. In this booklet, it's on page Chaf, and yours, I'm not sure. Now we can explain the question deeper. Juvenal P. Masha Mevarik Victor's Amarazokim de Masabasme based on what the Alter Rebbe says in the Dibra Maschil the Etzem Mazet Yatzkot Tzivus Hashem. On that very day, all the Tzivus Hashem went out of Egypt, and he used it on Maimed Azal. And he says like this, based on the sages that said, Miyayim Shebara Kadosh Baruch Hasalami, from the day that Hashem created his world, that there was no person that called Hashem with the name Tzvais until Chana came around. Chana, the mother of Shmuel, was the first one to call Hashem with the name Tzvais. And when she was davening for her son, she was the first one to call Hashem the name Tzvais. What does that mean? So again, what we're going to explain here is, in the times of Moshe, you didn't need the name Tzvais. It was irrelevant because you had the sunshine, you had Atzilus shining. So it was like a candlelight, right? But then when you came to the times of Chana, and the generations already went down, they no longer had the light of the sun. With Moshe Rabbeinu, who was already generations later, now already the light of Moshe wasn't enough anymore. The light of Moshe wasn't enough. Why? Because the people weren't on that level of Atzilus. They couldn't deal with the Achdus. They couldn't deal with the unity. It's almost like the Rambam, which had his yard site a couple of days ago. The Rambam was made a large impact when he wrote his Meir Nevuchim, the Guide to the Perplexed. And there's a lot of pushback for it. Why? Because he's rationalizing all these Judaism. He's bringing philosophy into Judaism. Philosophy is a Greek thing. It's not a Jewish thing. But on the other hand, where the Rambam lived, it was critical because people were leaving Judaism. Why? Because we had no philosophy. We had everything was mystical. Everything was ritual, right? And so people saw no theology, no philosophy in Judaism, and they were leaving like crazy. And the Rambam stemmed that tide. Why? By explaining, yes, that we do have philosophy. We do have. Now, all the Jews in other places, like in France and stuff, northern France, those were places that didn't have philosophy. Not the Jews didn't have it, the non-Jews didn't have it, so they didn't struggle with these issues. So they didn't need the Guide to the Perplexed. When they started saying the Guide to the Perplexed, not only is not helpful to them, it's like, this is profanity. How can you say this? This is so irreverent. It's not, right? What was that? They burnt it, correct. But part of it is they didn't understand the need for it. Why? Because they didn't need it. As generations go down, you get different needs. It's almost like you come with the Torah of Moshe Rabbeinu, it's the generation of Chana, and it doesn't talk to them anymore because they don't know what unity means. They see a world. They live in creation. They live in Biyah. They see stuff. They see legions. And you're going to tell them unity and everything. It's not enough anymore. So what did the prophets have to do? They had to bring Hashem, so to speak, down, or at least not bring it down, but uncover and show people that Hashem is in creation as well. Hashem is not just an Atzilus. Hashem is here in Biyah, in creation. That's what Chana did. That's what the prophets did. Moshe Rabbeinu didn't need to tell anybody that because they didn't struggle with that. Why? Because everything was one. They saw the oneness of Hashem. So you don't have to tell them, in creation is also... They didn't see creation almost. They saw the oneness. They didn't need to convince them about it. But now that they didn't see the oneness anymore, they had to start convincing them. That's why Chana was the first one Chana was the first one to use this name, Tzvais. And that's what the Alter Rebbe is basically explaining here, is why they needed that name. So let's do it inside the text. And he explains like this. The essence of this Datzilas, Shemislabish Bahen, Oirin Seif, what are names? The first we have to establish is, what is a name of Hashem? A name of Hashem is the light of Hashem coming down into a vessel. Because with the way becomes one with that vessel, that Hashem and his vessel are one, that is what a name is. A name is where Hashem unites with the vessel. What do you need a vessel for? What do you need a name for? So the Rebbe is going to say here is, because how do you understand Hashem if you don't have a vessel? How do you understand Hashem if the light doesn't come down into something? Let me give you an example of this, okay? In the Torah, we use all these terms for Hashem. Like he took us out with his outstretched arm, with his mighty hand, he took us out of Egypt. Right? But of course, does Hashem have a hand?
No.
So what do the sages tell us? That the Torah uses a language that we can relate to. Right? So it gives us a language that we can relate to, so we can understand this. So think about it for a second. What would it look like if the Torah would describe this outstretched hand and this mighty hand that took us out of Egypt, but on Hashem's terms, not on our terms? What would it sound like? Think about it for a moment, right? We totally not understand. We could never understand, because you're talking about no form, no body, no form, no what, right? Even we're talking about here Atzilus. Explain the hand of Atzilus, right? Atzilus also has hands. It's a body, it's a form, right? There's hands, there's things. All that. Explain to me in the terminology of Atzilus. We don't even have words for this stuff, right? And even the words that we would use, we'd completely not understand. So what do we have to do? You have to take this idea, which is something going on you have to take this idea of something going on before creation even existed. You're talking about attributes of Hashem, and now you have to make it palatable, understandable to me and you. What are you going to do? What are you going to do now? How are you going to explain this stuff to me and you? How are you going to explain what it means that Hashem took us out with whatever went on in Atzilus, right? The way he took us out. How are you going to explain that to us? Well, the way you do it is you put it into something that we can relate to. So what does the Torah do? He says, oh, you have a hand. So the pasuk says Hashem took us out with the outstretched hand. And we're like, oh, I can relate to that. Now I have to now understand that his hand is very much different than mine, and my hand is a very bad example for this, right? But at least I have something to work with. Why? Because we took something which is undefinable. We don't have any words for it. And what do? What? Okay. So we took something which is not definable and we put it into definition. We put something which is non-describable and we put it into a description. Now we can understand a little bit what we're talking about. We can picture a little bit, right? Now, but the picture we have as a child is not. Then we get a little older and we become a little bit more abstract and realize it's not. But at least we have something to work with. If the Torah would just use terms that describe it the way it is in its own words and in terms of Atzilus, we would be clueless. It would go right over our head. What it's like is a teacher teaching something, but the way they understand it and not putting it into the vessel of the child, right? So you might say all this wonderful stuff, but it goes right over the head of the kid, which essentially the Torah could have done. It could have just said it the way it was, and then of course we had no clue what's going on. So what does the Torah do? It puts it into something that we can relate to. That's what a name does. A name is taking something which is undefinable, which is indescribable. You're talking about the infinite Hashem. What's infinity? My kids are always saying like infinity, right? Infinity must be the biggest number, bigger than any number. No, it's a whole different concept. There's no numbers there. It's beyond numbers, right? As a kid, of course, you haven't said that, but what's infinity? We have no clue. Not only that, in Hebrew, what do you call infinity? You call it bli gvul. We call it non-finite. We have no clue what infinity is. So the only term we can call it is, it's not finite. That's all we know about it. It is not limited, right? We have no clue what it means. Now, how do you take this infinity and turn it into something that I can relate to, I can understand, I can use? And that's what Hashem does. Hashem is this infinite, right? Whatever Hashem is, right? He's infinite. He takes his infinite light, and then he wants to create, run a world, make us relatable to him, and so on and so forth. How does he do it? That's the purpose of a name. It's like taking this outstretched arm, whatever it means in Atzilus, and putting it into a term, into a definition that we can deal with, that we can understand, and we can relate to, we can talk about it, and then slowly understand a little bit more because we have something to work with. So Hashem has to do the same thing. He has to take this infinite light and put it into something that we can work with it. What is that? in chachma, in chesed, in names. That's the definition of a name. Now we can relate to it. Now we can understand it. Now we can deal with it. Now there's something we can work with. So that's the definition of a name. It's taking something indescribable, indefinable, and giving it an anchor for us. It's giving us a definition that we can have a grasp on it. We can at least talk about it. We can understand it. We can have something about it. Because if you can't define it, you can't understand, like infinity. You can't define it, so you can't understand it. You can't grasp it. Even though we said before about Atzilus being the world of one, we can't wrap our minds around it. We can say words, but we have no clue what we're saying. What does it mean that Hashem and His spheres are one? I have no clue what that means. Why? Because we have nothing to relate to it. We don't see things that we don't stand things that way. There's place. Things are different. You have things, right? We can't relate to it. And that's what a name does. Again, it takes the infinite light of Hashem and it makes it definable. That now we can start grasping it, understanding it, relating to it, and so on. That's that insight. What does this mean? A name above it's like a name below. That on the one hand, it's only a ray. It's only a little bit. It's not his essence, right? It's again the way that you define his infinity, but it's just a ray. The same thing is above. The lights of Hashem, which come down and are revealed below, is all His name. It's all His name. It's all just a name. Meaning, it's just ha'ar. It's just a ray. In order that these lights should be in a way of light and revelation, you have to define it. You have to limit it. You have to put it into something. You can only receive the light if it has a certain definition, if it becomes something. Infinite light, you can't relate to it. It's undefinable. In order to relate to it, it has to be defined in something. Medidav Agba has to be limited. And that is the vessel of the light. That through that you can receive the light. You have to have a vessel that defines light. It's almost like our body does, in a sense, the same thing. Our soul has all these capacities, right? But what our body does, it limits the powers of the soul to certain things. It channels into certain things. Now I can only see physical reality. When a soul is in heaven, it sees a whole different seeing, right? That a vessel, that's what it does. It defines what it is. It restricts it and makes it a certain thing. Now that it restricts it, now I can deal with it. Imagine if us humans would not have this restriction, then this reality would be completely different. We couldn't live in this world if we saw everything that's right. If we wouldn't be restricted in what we see. Even things that we know scientifically that exist out here, if we would see all that stuff, we would freak out, right? The bacteria and all this kind of stuff. There's so much that we don't see, but that's what, Rashi says, that a human can't see an angel, because if we see an angel, we freak out, right? These things that restrict us and allow us to be who we are. So the same thing as Hashem's infinite light, the restriction of it makes it usable, user-friendly for us. These are the 7 names of Hashem that are not allowed to be erased. They're the lights of Hashem, which come down to vessels. Every light has its specific vessel. Every light has its vessel. You have the light of Chesed, light of Gvura, and each one has a name. Now that is names generally. So again, what's names generally? It's all a ray of Hashem. It's not Hashem's essence. It's Hashem's ray. It's the way Hashem comes down to deal with the world. But it also, what does the vessel do? It defines the light. It gives it a definition. It gives it a certain limitation, so that it only works in one area or in a certain area. So now it's user friendly. It's usable for the purposes that it's supposed to do. When you talk about the 7 names that are not erased, they're the way they are in the world of Atzilus. They're the way they are in Atzilus. That there they are one. Them and their The light is one. Them and the vessel is one. They are not recognized as something for themselves. They are swallowed up and they're one with Hashem. The world of unity. The world of oneness. In Atzilus, everything is godliness. He becomes one not just with the lights, but also with the vessels. He becomes one with the vessels. The world of Atzilus, like I mentioned before, is a world of Achdus. It's a world of oneness. There's only one thing. There's only Hashem. In that oneness, you have 10 spheres, you have all these things. But as we said before, it's like the Rambam writes, He is the knower, He is the knowledge, He is what's known. And it's all one. There's no, you can't split it up into different parts. It's by Him, it's all one. Hashem Echad. There's only one. And that's the difference in Atzilus. And before Atzilus, you have spheres. There's things going on there, but there's not many. It's all just one. Atzilus is the world of Achdus, the world of oneness. And this is the way the world was in the days of Moshe. The days of Moshe, the world was one. Everything was at that level of oneness. Moshe was on the level of Atzilus, even though he was down here in this world. But in Atzilus, and his whole purpose was to receive the Torah the way it is in Atzilus. He went up to heaven. What does that mean? Where did he go up to? He went up to Atzilus and to take the Torah to bring it down the way it is to his generation, the generation of knowledge, the generation of Moshe. His generation were on his level of Atzilus. That's why they were called the generation of Moshe. Der Melashon Shura. Der, we said before, also means not just the generation, but also means a row. They were on the same row as Moshe Rabbeinu. They were on the same level of Moshe Rabbeinu. This is serving Hashem in the way of Atzilus. Him and his name, Him and his light, Him and his vessel, they're all one. It's hard to imagine what the world would look like. What does it mean when you're on the world that you live in the reality of Atzilus in this world? I'm not even sure we can even comprehend what that means, right? What does the world look like when you're in Atzilus? But that's the world that they lived on. There was Achdus. By them, they didn't need, you didn't need to prove to them godliness. They saw it. Everything was one. Everything was, godliness was shining. The world was one. Everything was one. Hashem was one. That's the way it was in their time. And that, again, the question will be is, how come you're using this name Tzvais, which represents, as we're going to say in a second, the world of Biyah. Let's continue. So he continues, what is Tzvais? The name Tzvais represents creation. Like he said, he is exceptional in his legions. Meaning their legions, there's no longer oneness. Atzilus is oneness, there are no legions there. He is exceptional amongst his legions. You have the booklets, the second line on page Chaf Aleph. Hashem Tzvais le'nisker b'zmanahu. The name Tzvais was not mentioned in that time of Moshe Rabbeinu. Why? Because what is it compared to other names? What's its significance compared to all the other names? Tzvais, when you compare it to the other names, has no significance. As I'm going to say soon, it's like a candlelight in the sunlight. What do you do with a candle in sunlight? It doesn't help you at all. And the meaning is like this, as he explains there in that Maimer, again, talking about the Alter Rebbe. Your name Tzvais, legions, that's what it means. It means legions. What is it talking about? It's talking about his legions of souls and angels, the Bria in creation. Asher ein mispar ligduda, that there is no count. You can't count his legions, his battalions. You can't. What are you talking about? You're talking about legions. In Atzilus, there are no legions. There's no angels. There's no things there. It's all just one. Okay, this is the Gemara, as the Gemara says about the name Tzvais, he is exceptional amongst his legions. Hainu, Even though that we're talking about here is they talking about Hashem coming down, meaning that it's Hashem, meaning it's the name of Hashem. That it's from the names that are not allowed to be erased. So you're talking about a holy name of Hashem. What are we talking about? It's about it's a name that represents in the many he is exceptional. In amongst the legions, he is exceptional. Who are we talking about here? We're talking about legions. Legions, again, is in creation. Also in creation, even there, Hashem should come down in complete unity, complete oneness, as he is in Atzilus. The name Tzvais represents as you're bringing down that oneness of Hashem into creation. The oneness that you have that's a given in Atzilus, which is not a given in creation, where the name Tzvais is to bring that oneness down into creation. That's what these prophets were doing. In a time when they couldn't relate to the oneness of Atzilus anymore, so what do? They draw down the oneness of Hashem into creation. To go to the snack bag. Yankee W, show over the snack bag. And because in Moshe's times they didn't have this need, they didn't have a need of being exceptional in his legions, because there were no legions. In his time, everything was one. They didn't see their eyes like we perceive creation. In their eyes, what do they see? They saw oneness. They saw Hashem in everything. They didn't need to be convinced that Hashem is one in creation. There was no, for them also, there was no creation. Everything was one already. By them, they saw clearly Hashem's energy that gives life to everything. And the way that energy is one with him. Now that they see the way that Hashem creates everything, right? But they saw how that which Hashem creates everything with is one with him as well. Meaning that's Atzilus. They saw the koyach hapoyel, the creative powers of Hashem that come down into creation, the way they were still connected with him in Atzilus. Therefore, they didn't have any. There was no revelation. They didn't need the revelation of Hashem Tzvais, of the name of Tzvais. Why? The Shaga B'tira, Ma'ahani. What does it help to light a candle when you have sunlight? Tzvais, bringing unity into creation didn't make sense to them. They didn't need it. Of course, it was there, but they didn't need it because everything was one regardless. But once they got the next generations, after the sun, the face of the sun, which is a reference to Moshe. It says that Moshe's face shone like the sun. After the shine of the sun, meaning Moshe passed away, and then the face of the moon came along, which is Yeshua. Yeshua says his face shone like the moon. Right, the Moshe had to cover his face because it was shining too much, and they couldn't handle it. It says his face shone like the sun, and Yeshua's face shone like the moon. And even then they didn't need the name Tzvais. Even then it came down Shemashalas Kanim. As the Pirkei Avos says, they went down to the elders. It came to the Nevi'im, and the elders gave it to the Nevi'im. Only then, by the Nevi'im, by the prophets, they need this name of Tzvais. That's when prophecy really began among the Jews. But even Moshe, in a way that it wasn't like Nevuas Moshe, like the prophecy of Moshe. Moshe's Nevuah was unique. There was no other prophet like Moshe, right? His prophecy was unique. So that prophecy lingered, I guess, or that something about it lingered up until the times of the prophets. Then already there was a whole new type of prophecy. And that's when they needed a whole different thing because it was much lower. They didn't see the unity in creation anymore. That's when you needed the avodah. That's when you need to serve Hashem the way it is in creation. Now you have to deal with a world, and a world that is not one with Hashem. And therefore they have to deal with the whole new set of inspiration, which is to bring Hashem down into creation. That's the name Tzvais. That's why the prophets, starting from Chana, needed Tzvais. They needed to accomplish this idea of Tzvais. He is exceptional among his legions. To make that this world should be that we should bring Hashem down into the world until he unites with this table, unites with me, unites with you, just like he is in Atzilus. That's what the name Tzvais does. That you should bring that unity down into creation. Now we can understand Now we can understand the great question in the Maimer. Being that in Moshe's times they did not need this idea of legions, because legions didn't exist yet. They were all at the level of oneness. Why are Jews called Tzivos Hashem? So again, makes the question stronger. Why are the Jews called Tzivos Hashem if that name wasn't in use yet? For Hashem at least. And we should reflect Hashem. So we should have used a name that with Geula, which is Yud-Kei, at least the name that was at that time Kel Shakai. But what about this name Tzvais that wasn't even applicable at that time? And that's the name that we are called. So just a quick overview of what it's going to go into as we continue the Maimer, and then I guess we'll go review what we did today, and then So what the Maimer is going to continue saying is, first of all, it's going to make the question even deeper based on Mitzvah. We're not going to that now. Wait till next week. But then it explains like this: the Frierdiker Rebbe says that Sava means three things. The definition of the word Sava, Tzivos Hashem, legions of Hashem, means three things. Sava means soldiers. And the idea of soldiers is going to be the whole next part of Basi Legani, which we're not going to go very much into this year, but as the years come, chapters 11 and on, it goes on, I think even maybe the rest of the Maimer goes on describing this idea that we are soldiers of Hashem and how armies work and so on and so forth. That's going to be the continuation of the Maimer. But he says another two explanations for Tzava, interpretations for Tzava. The second one is beauty, form. Form is you have different parts and you bring it together, then you have beauty. And the Frierdiker says that it's like all of us, that we're different, yet we all come together, and that makes the beauty. That's another thing that we're going to explain in this Maimer. And then the third explanation of Tzava is time. That we're given we're allotted a certain amount of time to do this. And these are going to be the three explanations of Tzava. Again, number one is soldiers, which is going to be explained later, much more. Beauty, and that we have a lot of time for it. And that's going to be till the end of the Maimer. That's what we're basically going to be explaining that idea. But okay, so for a recap of what we did today, the question, what the Rebbe does now is expanding on the question of the previous Rebbe. The previous Rebbe asks, why are we called Tzivos Hashem if Hashem is not called Tzvais yet? So the first explanation that the Rebbe gave to that is Tzvais was not a name of Geula, not a name of redemption, and it's not even a name that was used in the times of Egypt and the times of our forefathers, which was Kel Shakai. And so therefore the question is, why are we using a name that wasn't at that time? Why are we using Tzivos Hashem, which is a reflection of Tzvais, of Hashem being Tzvais, when that name Tzvais was not being used? And then the Rebbe expanded on that question. And that was from the Alter Rebbe explaining that that names are generally in Atzilus, in a world of Achdus, of oneness. It's the way that Hashem's infinite light becomes one with the spheres, becomes one with the name. That's the way names are generally. But then you have the name Tzvais. That's the way Hashem's infinite light comes down into not just into the names, but also into creation, into his legions. So there's no more oneness anymore. Now there's legions, and you have to bring that oneness into the legions. That is the way Hashem comes down into creation. That's the name Tzvais. And this makes the question even greater because the Jews at that time were on the level of Atzilus. They were on the level of Moshe Rabbeinu, which was a neshama of Atzilus, a soul from Atzilus, meaning they were on a level of oneness. If they were on the level of oneness, why are you calling them Tzivos Hashem, which represents legions? Legions represent the way they are in creation. They weren't in creation yet. They were still in pre-creation. They were still in the world of Atzilus. So that makes the question even greater. How come the Jews, when they went out of Egypt, were called Tzivos Hashem, when that's a name which is used, again, for creation, for Biyah? When the Jews were not at that level, they were still a level of Atzilus, of oneness. Make sense? All right, hopefully clear. All right. We'll continue God about next week. I should run on the stream. And